The hospital room was steeped in a heavy silence, the kind that clings to the walls and settles deep in the chest. Machines hummed quietly, their beeping a steady reminder that time was slipping away. A slice of late afternoon sunlight filtered through the half-drawn curtains, casting long soft lines across the linoleum floor. Along the windowsill, flowers crowded together, bouquets sent by colleagues, neighbors, old friends, even distant family members, filling the room with a fragrance that felt almost defiant in the face of death. At the center of it all, by the bedside, sat a man who didn't belong to any of them. His name was David Monroe. His fingers, steady but worn with exhaustion, gently curled around the frail hand of the woman lying motionless in the bed. His thumb traced slow circles over the back of her hand, a silent devotion written in every movement. David's eyes, rimmed with sleeplessness, never strayed toward the others. Not when Elise's brother, Nathan, coughed pointedly by the door. Not when her mother, Lillian, dabbed at her already raw eyes and studiously avoided looking in his direction. David remained where he was, whispering soft words into the stillness meant only for Elise's wife. "You were so brave," he murmured, voice cracking slightly. "Brave enough to love, even when they didn't understand." Across the room, Elise's family sat in stiff-backed chairs, the kind the nurses wheeled in hastily when they realized visitors would be staying for hours. Lillian wore a navy blue dress and a string of pearls that hadn't been fashionable in decades. Her bun pulled so tightly it seemed to hold her face together. Her back was straight, her hands resting on a clutch she held like a shield. She only showed emotion when her gaze accidentally fell on David and then it was only a flash of disdain before she looked away. Elise's father, Richard, stood by the window, arms crossed, eyes glued to the parking lot as if he could will a car to drive him away from this moment. A nurse entered quietly, checking the 4-line and adjusting the monitor. She offered David a kind smile. "Mr. Monroe," she said softly, "please let us know if you need anything." Lillian stiffened. "Monroe," she muttered under her breath, her mouth twisting around the name like it tasted wrong. David heard it but didn't react. His left hand, adorned with a simple gold wedding band, moved to brush a stray lock of hair from Elise's forehead. He hadn't taken that ring off since the day they had exchanged vows in a courthouse 7 years ago. Elise wore hers too, though few had ever noticed. But today, in the sterile light of the hospital room, the ring caught the sun at just the right angle. Lillian's lips pressed into a thin line at the sight of it. Her hand clutched her purse tighter. They had never asked who Elise spent her holidays with when she declined invitations. Never asked who took the photos when she sent postcards from exotic places. And Elise had never volunteered the truth. She knew better. David had been invisible for years. But now here he was in plain sight, exactly where Elise wanted him to be, at her side in the end. Even if they still pretended not to see him, he leaned closer, resting his forehead against hers. "You didn't need their permission," he whispered. "You never did." The heart monitor beeped steadily. The tension in the room grew thick enough to choke. A cousin cleared her throat. Someone else shifted uncomfortably. David stayed silent. None of these people knew the way Elise's laugh sounded at midnight when they shared ice cream on the couch. None of them had held her through the gut-wrenching nights when the diagnosis had seemed too much to bear. None of them knew the secret language of glances and inside jokes they had built together, brick by careful brick. David's love didn't need their recognition. It had always been enough for Elise, and that made it enough for him. His gaze drifted to the worn leather bag tucked under the hospital bed. A corner of a photo frame peeked out. He reached down, pulling it free gently. Behind the scratched glass was a photo. Elise, sun-kissed and laughing, leaning against his shoulder, the ocean foaming wildly behind them. Their last anniversary trip to the coast, the one place she didn't have to hide. Their wedding day had been small, quiet. An exchange of vows in a courthouse with no family, just 2 close friends standing witness. Elise had worn a pale lavender dress and a nervous smile. David had worn his one good suit, slightly too tight in the shoulders. No announcements, no fuss, no expectations to manage. Afterward, they had eaten sandwiches on a park bench, too happy to care about appearances. David smiled faintly at the memory. She had slipped her wedding ring into her purse each time she visited her parents. She had made up endless reasons why holidays were too complicated, why vacations were always with friends. David understood. He hadn't resented it. Love, real love, wasn't about being paraded for approval. It was about staying, even when no one was watching. Especially then. He remembered asking her once, Do you ever wish things were easier? Elise had curled into his side and whispered, I just wish they could see you the way I do. David had kissed the top of her head, knowing that wish would never come true. The murmurs in the room buzzed like static, barely above a whisper. An aunt leaned in close to her daughter and said, Poor man, probably just a friend from work. David heard it. He always heard it. He said nothing. His love didn't need an audience. He turned the photo over, tracing her smile with his thumb. The door opened again. Lillian stepped in, a young priest trailing behind her, murmuring about blessings and sacraments. Her eyes narrowed when she saw David still at Elise's side. This is a family moment, she said sharply. He can wait outside. Before David could reply, a voice from the doorway stopped the confrontation. He stays, the nurse said firmly, stepping into the room. Mrs. Monroe asked for him to be here. He's not family, Lillian snapped. The nurse didn't blink. He is. Legally. David reached into his jacket pocket and produced a thin, worn document, Elise's advance directive. He opened it carefully, holding it up for all to see. At the bottom, in neat handwriting, was her signature beside the words next of kin, David Monroe, spouse. The priest looked between David and Lillian, clearly uncomfortable. Lillian stared at the paper, her face going slack. Then, slowly, her eyes dropped to Elise's left hand, the wedding band. She tried not to notice. David said nothing. He simply folded the document and placed it back in his pocket. When the priest asked if David would like to join in prayer, he nodded. She believed in grace, David said quietly. Let's honor that. As the priest's voice rose in prayer, David bowed his head, still holding Elise's hand. In that moment, he was not invisible, not hidden, not minimized. He was exactly who Elise had declared him to be, with words, with love, and now with the law, her husband, her family.